Now, the beauty is, you and I have Genesis to Revelation. So we can set scriptures beside Ecclesiastes chapter 6 and see some amazing benefit from what Solomon learned. So please don't slump down in your chair when we're done reading Ecclesiastes chapter 6. I promise it's going to get better from here. Okay? Now, I shouldn't have said that very expressively. How many know the Bible's good in all of its parts? And I'm thankful that God has given to us moments like in Ecclesiastes chapter 6 where you shake your head because you and I can learn from it. So you see in Ecclesiastes chapter 6, and we're going to look at Ecclesiastes chapter 6 from this perspective, an eclipse of the heart. And as you are reminded probably of this word eclipse and what we've just gone through over the last week, you will see how the things of this world can so easily eclipse the work that God desires to do in our lives. So if you're there, Ecclesiastes chapter 6, verse 1, it says this: "There is an evil which I have seen under the sun, and it is common among men. A man to whom God hath given riches, wealth, and honor, so that he wanteth nothing for his soul of all that he desireth, yet God giveth him not power to eat thereof, but a stranger eateth it. This is vanity, and it is an evil disease. If a man begat 100 children, and live many years, so that the days of his years be many, and his soul shall be filled with good, and also that he have no burial, I say that an untimely birth is better than he. For he cometh in with vanity, and departeth in darkness, and his name shall be covered with darkness. Moreover, he hath not seen the sun, nor anything. This hath more rest than the other. Yea, though he live 1,000 years twice told, yet hath he seen no good. Do not all go to one place. All the labor of man is for his mouth, and yet the appetite is not filled. For what hath the wise man more than the fool? Or what hath the poor that knoweth to walk before the living? Better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of the desire. This is also vanity and vexation of spirit. That which hath been is named already, and it is known that it is man, neither may he contend with him that is mightier than he. Seeing there be many things that increase, vanity, what is man the better? For who knoweth what is good for man in his life, all the days of his vain life which he spendeth as a shadow? For who can tell a man what shall be after him under the sun?" All right, how many of you are thankful you came to church today now? That's a lot of vanity and trouble in spirit. And again, this word vanity is emptiness. It has no long-term benefit spiritually in our lives, or the evil that is placed in this world. And the reality is we go throughout our day, we understand in the world that we live in, there is tremendous amounts of evil that we encounter every day. So how do you and I walk in such an evil world? Now, for most all of us this last week, we took some part in a solar eclipse. Some of you didn't even know it happened. Some of you could have cared less. Some knew and cared, but because we lived outside of its path, felt helpless to be able to experience it the way you wanted to. And then some knew, watched it some way to experience the phenomena that had happened, but not all that often. It's interesting to me as I thought about the solar eclipse because I fit into the I could care less category. Anybody there with me? All right, I'm glad I'm not alone on that one. But as I thought about this, I was reminded that when the sun was fully covered, that stars appeared in the middle of the day, changing how the sun interacted with the earth. As I thought about this eclipse, I was reminded when Christy and I took our kids to see a partial eclipse in North Carolina in 2017, I believe. There was a lot of preparation to these moments. We needed glasses. We needed to leave early so we could get to where they suggested was a really good place to see it, on a mountain near our house. But we knew it was going to be busy and it was going to be hard to find a place to park. There was all of this time. There was all of this build-up. And I just remember, after 16 seconds of the sky going dark, thinking, this is it? I mean, this is what all the hype has been all about? And I thought to myself, I just don't get why people get excited about an eclipse that happens for a brief period of time, that you really have to follow a lot of warnings to enjoy. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. Anyhow, there's a lot of excitement that gets built up around solar eclipses because they are so rare. They don't happen very frequently in our lives. So you find people who are, as we were told this last week, maybe 107 and saw 5 full solar eclipses in their life. It's that rare. Now imagine with me how much our world would change if solar eclipses would happen more frequently. Let's say in 2025, an eclipse happens for 30 minutes every day for the rest of that year. I'm sure it would be weird at first, but most everyone and everything would adapt and change to this new normal. But let's say 3 years into this change, eclipses lasted 5 hours every single day for the next little while. Then let's just say in 10 years, they last 10 hours. What you eventually realize is that the inhabitants of the earth would be left without the beneficial effects of the sun to produce as it was created to produce. Now, I'll tell you, if this happens, solar eclipse, 10 hours a day, fire me from preaching, because Happy Rob will no longer be here. I like the sun. How many are there with me? I like the sun. I am more than happy. I sent a picture to my parents this last week. The work truck said 100 degrees. And my mom said, yikes. I said, I'm still in a long sleeve shirt working. And so I like the sun. And I know many of you do too. And we understand there is great benefit. We all learned about the benefit of the sun on the earth as we went through grade school. And we began to understand the cycle of the sun. We knew the importance that it had on earth. And yet, think about the fact that much like in grade school science, in children's church, we learn the importance of the Son, Jesus Christ, on the human life. So here is what Solomon shows us in Ecclesiastes chapter 6. There are a lot of people who could care less about their need for the Son, Jesus Christ. And there are some who will go chasing things that they will eventually realize that have eclipsed the benefit of having the Son, Jesus Christ, in their lives. There is nothing glaringly positive in this chapter, so what I want us to do is to recognize the influence of the world on the Christian, and then examine how we ourselves are reacting to the offer of the Son, Jesus Christ. Now, I am going to say Son, Jesus Christ every time, because I don't want you to think I'm talking about the sun up in the sky. So hopefully the energy drink has kicked in and we'll keep it all together, okay? So would you notice first with me Solomon's identification of God's good gifts? If you noticed in verses 1 and verse 2, Solomon comes back and he talks about money again. Now I know that we all love coming to church and hearing preachers talk about money. So what I have done is we're not going to spend all the time talking about money like we did last Sunday. However, we do recognize it again as a good gift. Last Sunday, we mentioned James chapter 1 and verse 17, that every good gift and every perfect gift is from above and cometh down from the Father of lights, in whom there is no variableness nor shadow of turning. And we are reminded again this morning that God has given to this world some good gifts that help it produce what God desires. Now, there are a lot of debates in the world today about the moral nature of things. I'm sure we've all heard about the conversations around the morality of music. Now, what you realize in the list of gifts that Solomon uses here to illustrate his point is that in and of themselves, maybe except for people, these things are amoral, meaning they have no moral value until they are attached to an activity. So Solomon starts right here, where he left off in chapter 5, and he talks about money. But the thing about the gift that God has given us called money is that money is paper, or money is some metal. There's nothing moral or immoral about it. It's just there as a gift to be used. People make money, and people spend money. People make money morally by working for a good cause the right way, or they make money immorally. But what they do with that money is either moral or immoral based on the morality of God that he's given to us in his word. So you see that money in and of itself isn't good or evil, it's what we do with it. Solomon then talks about family. Now again, we know that the heart is deceitful and desperately wicked, but at its basest sense, a family is not good or bad until we make it good or bad, based on the choices that we make every day. Solomon talks about work. And all of you now are thinking to yourself that James lied. Work isn't a good gift. How many of you know work is a good gift? Work was there in the garden right from the beginning of time, and it became difficult because of sin. But work is a good gift given to us by God. Now, what we do with work makes it moral or immoral. And so you see that God has created us to work from the beginning. We have a purpose. God has created us to be engaged with people. He told us that it was not good for Adam to be alone. We have a system of trade in the form of money today. So what you see is that God didn't create us with every good gift to survive. He created us for community. Therefore, we need other gifts that will cost us to get them. And so God has provided for this world good gifts to thrive under the sun. Now, that's the sun that rises and sets. There is activity in this world that God has created, and you and I can thrive by the grace of God as we walk through this temporal world. And that's what I hope we can see this morning by the good gifts that God has given to us. It's interesting as you look at the effects of the sun on planets. The sun is a gift to plants. Every plant takes in the sun that it needs so that with that sun it can produce energy so that it thrives. When it gets too much sun, it gives it out so that it is not consumed by the sun. Roots are great. We've talked a lot about root systems in the first few months of this year. But without water and without sun, those roots ultimately become ineffective. So we see here that God has given to us some good gifts But you and I need to not only notice he's given us these gifts, we need to notice that Solomon gives us a warning about the possibility of an eclipse. So we see number 2, Solomon's eclipse warning. How many of you were inundated through social media or news feeds with eclipse warnings leading up to the event? Get your glasses. Don't look too long. If you're going to use a camera, use it this way. And on and on and on they went. As much as we think, who cares about these warnings? Just let me watch this eclipse. What you find is that these warnings are actually for our benefit. And so we all want good pictures. We all want the excitement of being in the thick of things. But we have to start with the effects of looking at the sun without protecting our eyes. We've got to start with the warnings. So Solomon talks a lot about the good gifts of God in this chapter, but every good gift has an absolute, extremely important warning that we can see beside it. Ultimately, what I see Solomon showing us in these verses is that it is very difficult to enjoy the good gifts of God without enjoying the God of the gifts. And we talked about that just a little bit last Sunday. So, you and I need to understand that it is God who gives us those gifts to enjoy. So as we look at these verses, let's look at them through the lens that Solomon is showing us, that God is given to us the sun as a gift. He's given us the moon as a gift as well. But if we're not careful, the moon can eclipse the sun and create a bad effect out of a good gift. I remember years ago, I was trying to develop sharing my faith in ways that would be effective as I went out, whether it was door to door or some other way. And I came across an individual named Ray Comfort. Ray Comfort is an Australian Christian, and he illustrated so well how to share his faith through the Ten Commandments. In some of the things that I read years ago, he shared a story about his children. He said that as he would go off to work, he would come home and his kids would be ready at the door, ready to give him a hug, and excited that he was home. It was then that he decided it would be good for his family to have a television. So he bought his family a television, and his kids fell in love with that gift that he had presented to the family. He recalls then that it was rather interesting that the waiting at the door and the hugs became more and more infrequent because they were captivated by the TV, to the point that there was a day that came that no child for a long period of time even initiated the idea that their father was home and wanted to give them a hug. And what Ray Comfort illustrates from this is that they had fallen more in love with the gift than the giver of the gift. And you and I are going to see, as we walk through this world, the gifts that God has given to us. And the reality is that you and I, too, can fall more in love with the gifts rather than the giver of those gifts. And so we need to pay attention to the warnings that Solomon gives to us here. As we've said many times before, the benefit that we have reading Ecclesiastes is that we are reading it from someone who has experienced the world from the world's vantage point and was left wanting because of what they experienced without God as their light and guide. So, would you notice the first warning as Solomon speaks about, we'll put it, material things this morning. Verse 2, a man to whom God hath given riches, wealth and honor, so that he wanteth nothing for his soul of all that he desireth, yet God giveth him not power to eat thereof, but a stranger eateth it. This is vanity, and it is an evil desire. Now, so funny. Yesterday I took off work to go to Caitlin's last rodeo, so yesterday was my day to sleep in with absolutely no distractions. How many like setting up your life for that kind of day? I have talked about the home we are working on up in near the foothills, and I mentioned to you that it was broken into several weeks ago, and they lost a lot of value in the home. Well, 6:30 a.m., Aaron calls. He and our other workers were there and had a wonderful interaction with the police officers. What the owner has done is put in security cameras, and Aaron's work truck has no identification of our company, and so she must have called the police, and they came to the job site. See, she has riches, and that's not bad. But now she has cameras because she has experienced the effect that she can use her money for gifts, but the reality is there are people in this world who are evil and desire to take from her. So here's the thing. We can do all we can to protect our things, but the market will still crash. Thieves, as we mentioned last week, will break through and steal. Matthew chapter 6, verse 19. Lay not up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. So Solomon is challenging us to be very careful, because we have the Son who has given us good gifts, and yet if we're not careful, the material things of this world can eclipse the life that God has offered us through Jesus Christ, and it gets in the way of us experiencing the life that God desires for us to have. We understand that there are people who don't want to work hard for a living. And what they will then do is choose to work hard to take what others have for themselves. Now, I've mentioned several times how many of you have been engaged with the Prince of Ethiopia by way of email, and they tell you you have inherited these thousands of dollars or millions of dollars. I remember one time, I just received hundreds of these emails and started to receive phone calls about these events. And so I got a phone call, and they told me about what I had inherited. I said, that is so awesome. And they got excited because they think they got somebody who's going to give them all their information that they need. I said, here's the thing. Why don't, instead of you working so hard to steal from me, work hard and produce something beneficial for this world? Click, there it goes. Yeah, we understand there's a lot of people who work hard, but they work hard at evil things. And so Solomon challenges us, be careful that we do not love the material things of this world so much that we just shake our fist at God when bad things happen in this world, because this world's full of evil people who are more than welcome or willing to steal our good gifts that God has given to us. God has clearly established that there is a problem in the human heart. So you and I need to be careful that our joy is not found in material things, because if it is, it's going to eclipse the work of the Son in our lives. Notice this second one. I put marriage and kids. And you notice in verse 3, it says, if a man begat 100 children and lived many years. In our setting here in the church, I am going to add marriage in the mix, even though Solomon doesn't. With marriage comes kids. It's a good place to say amen. All right? Oh, may we always teach this truth to the next generation. So Solomon say in Proverbs chapter 18, verse 22, whoso findeth a wife findeth a good thing and obtain favor with the Lord. Marriage is a good gift from God. Psalm chapter 127, verse 3 then tells us, lo, children are a heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. As arrows are in the hand of a mighty man, so are children of the youth. Happy is the man that hath his quiver full of them. Both marriage and children are good gifts given to us by God. But for many of us who have been married and have had children, or let's even say been around children, we all know that those blessings can go south really quick. How many understand that statement? Solomon finishes out this verse then with this. So that the days of his years may be many, and his soul be not filled with good, and also that they have no burial, I say that an untimely birth is better than he. For he cometh in with vanity, and departeth in darkness, and his name shall be covered with darkness. You see the challenge that we have with these good gifts, because these good gifts can hurt because they choose evil rather than good. You notice Solomon is talking about this person getting old. His kids leave them in the dust, and they don't even get a proper burial. Now, notice the intensity of the situation as Solomon goes full, it's a wonderful life on us. Solomon says, it would be better if they were never born at all. So, you see this challenge that we put the good gifts of God, marriage and children, in front of the Son, and eclipses the work of the Son on our lives, that it is the Son that produces joy, not the children. Now, the children can bring happiness, but again, as I said, we know that children can bring sorrow as well. Marriage can bring happiness, but we're going to realize very quickly, if our happiness is only in our spouse, then sometimes we're not going to be very happy. I think about it this way. As I was thinking about the good gifts of both marriage and children, I was reminded again of that statement that I've said to you many times from the book Sacred Marriage by Gary Thomas. He poses this question from his book: what if God designed marriage to make you holy instead of happy? What if our relationship with both spouse and children isn't as much about your spouse as it is about your need for God to be the light to direct your steps? And you and I need to be very careful that we do not allow the good gift of marriage and the good gift of children to eclipse the Son, Jesus Christ, because otherwise you and I will have a good chance at walking out on our relationship with God if we cannot find joy in our marriage and our children. Notice Solomon points to this third gift, long life. Yea, though he has lived 1,000 years twice told. How many said, oh me on that one? Right? You imagine living for 2,000 years? Yet he hath not seen no good. Do not all go to one place. You live 2,000 years, you're still going to die. You're still going to die and be buried in a grave. Now, I am not at the point in my life where I'm struggling to see the good of 85 years. But I will tell you this, I am at the point where I'm saying, God, please don't let me live to be 2,000 years old. How many understand that one, right? We were sleeping in the Jeep, as I mentioned, last night, about 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, I'm cramped up in a ball. My knee is absolutely throbbing. There's no way I can stretch it all the way out. And I'm thinking to myself, because I already know what I'm going to preach, God, please don't let me live to be 2,000 years and sleep in a Jeep. Here's the thing. You and I today are living on nutrition overload. And that's not a terrible thing. We are desiring to live longer. And yet, what are we realizing from feeds every single day? Generation Z is more depressed than any other generation ever before it. Without the proper purpose and perspective, all people are going to see is the evil in this world. And the negative long life eclipses the good purpose God designed for us to live for. Notice letter D, labor. We've talked about this just briefly already. As you see in verse 7, all the labor of man is for his mouth, and yet his appetite is not filled. I understand that wholeheartedly. I'm usually good with a cup of coffee in the morning, and yesterday, for whatever reason, maybe because I wasn't working, man, I got so hungry so early, and then we usually just buy some soup, cook it on a fire pit beside the trailer, halfway through the rodeo, or probably not even halfway through the rodeo. I was like, you know what? That hamburger sounds good right now. And so you go down and get a hamburger, and then you come back to the trailer and you still eat soup. How many of you understand sometimes your belly is just never filled? Now I understand that's not exactly what he's talking about, but I want you to understand God's given us labor as a good thing. You notice that God never once talks about retirement in the Bible. You say, oh, Pastor, don't go there. But we have a purpose for our life, and our purpose isn't to work hard so that we can retire. We have a purpose to serve the Lord with our whole heart, soul, mind, and strength from the day we are born till the day we die, and we need to develop that. Think about this. Paul says in 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 10, for even when we were with you, this we commanded, that if any man would not work, what's it say? Neither should he eat. And you see that there is a purpose of provision to work. But you think about this. God's blessed me with the ability to work and preach at the same time. I've had the ability to buy coffee and muffins and buy a hamburger. And it's very easy for us when we get that hamburger to say, but you know what? If I worked an extra hour, I could get a steak. And if I work 2 extra hours, I could have a steak and potato. And if I work 3 extra hours, I could actually buy a soda at the restaurant. My kids hate it. There's nothing worse that I hate than seeing the price of soda at restaurants. But all right, drinks in general are overpriced at restaurants. But I want you to understand, have you realized yet that it's easy to realize that labor is good, but more labor can provide us more things? I was reminded, I believe it was, I was reminded of an illustration about acquiring things. And it talked about the fact that the more things we acquire, the more time it takes out of our day. This gentleman was talking about the fact that he wanted to buy a swing set for his children. And this was beyond and above really what their family could afford. And he was reading the instructions on putting it together, and when he came to the very end, it was all together, and it said, now, every 30 days you should go back and tighten every single bolt. And he was thinking to himself, if I calculate this out and do what it says, it's this amount of time that I am going to put to this material thing that I thought was a good gift to my family. And so we're reminded of the importance that we have a good idea of what you and I need to live on so that we can then use it for exactly what we need and be able to labor in other ways for the glory of God. Think about what Paul continues on and says in 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 12. Now them which are such, now them that are such, we command and exhort by our Lord Jesus Christ, that with quietness they work and eat their own bread. And you see that we've been given the ability to work and to eat what God has given to us, and we don't need to keep up with the Joneses. So think about this. Jesus would establish this idea for rest and recovery. And he tells us in Mark chapter 2, verse 27, that the Sabbath, the rest, the day, the Sabbath was made for man, not the man for Sabbath. God knew that there was a point where we needed to stop. And God knows there's a point in our labor where it becomes evil instead of good. But notice this last one, letter E. Holy smokes, talking about out of time. Wisdom. For what hath the wise more than the fool? And you and I see just the wisdom that inundates our world today. We want more and more and more knowledge. And again, I'm not against gaining wisdom. We're memorizing a verse about getting wisdom in our Bible study. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 3, Solomon tells us, happy is the man that findeth wisdom and getteth understanding. It's a good gift from God. How many of you are thankful you found out how to tie your shoes? How many of you are thankful you found out that people make shoes without having to tie them? Even better, right? So there is some good wisdom that we can gain in this world. But you and I need to be very careful that we do not allow wisdom to eclipse the gift of the Son, Jesus Christ. I believe it was Richard Dawkins recently talking about being an atheist and how much he hated God. And the fact, though, that he really appreciated cultural Christianity. He actually said that he was a cultural Christian. I'm going to talk about it in just a second. Mind blown when I heard those words come out of his mouth. Notice number 3, though, Solomon's solution. We're running out of time. Verse 10. That which has been named already and is known, that is a man, neither may he contend with him that is mightier than he. For who knoweth what is good for man in this life? All the days of his life is vain. Verse 12, sorry. All the days of his life is vain, which is spent as a shadow. For who can tell a man what shall be after him under the sun? Solomon's solution is to look back to God. I'm not going to take the time this morning, but I would encourage you, go back into the book of Job, especially as you go to the end. A lot of arguing going on about life and evil in the beginning days with Job's friends and Job's wife. But you come to Job chapter 38 and verse 4, and you begin to hear this conversation from God to Job, and God is establishing that he is the one that has all things under control because he is the creator and sustainer of all things. He is the one who is able to make good out of evil. He is the one that is able to judge evil in the end properly. And then you notice in Isaiah chapter 46, verse 5, it says this, to whom will you liken me and make me equal and compare me that we may be alike? They lavish gold out of the bag and weigh silver in the balance and hire a goldsmith, and he maketh it a god. They fall down, yea, they worship. They bear him upon the shoulder. They carry him and set him in his place, and he standeth. For his place shall not remove, yea. One shall cry unto him, yea, yet can he not answer, nor save him out of this trouble. Remember this, and show yourselves men. Bring it again to mind, O ye transgressors. Remember the former things of old, for I am God, and there is none else. I am God, and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times the things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. Now, without a doubt, you and I need the Son to thrive in this world. Without a doubt, though, humanity needs the Son, Jesus Christ, who knows the end from the beginning. Richard Dawkins continued to carry on about the fact that America is going to be destroyed if we push against any longer the culture of Christianity. And he talked about the beauty that Christianity brings to this world. We give more money to the charities that are necessary for helping the poor and the sick than any other group possible. You and I give aid to other areas of the world through missionary service and the like. And he said, if we continue to press the direction that we're going, America is going to fold because of the lack of cultural Christianity. I just cringed every time he talked about cultural Christianity. But do you understand how prevalent cultural Christianity is? If I give my $50 a month to the church, I've been a good Christian. If I don't do something in my marriage, I've been a good Christian. If I don't beat my children and they run away from God, I've been a good Christian. If I work my 50, 70, 80 hours a week, I've been a good Christian. And the reality is Christianity is falling apart at the seams because Christ isn't the center of Christianity any longer. The good gifts of Christianity have become the focus of what Christianity is about. And so Solomon's solution is stop focusing on the gifts and start focusing on the giver, who is able to tell you the end from the beginning. He knows what life can be like in poverty. He knows what life can be like in riches. He knows what it's like to labor, and he knows what it's like to rest. You and I need to learn to focus on the giver. So let's tie all this together. How do you and I understand the work of the Son on our lives, and that he has given us gifts, but that we use them for his glory? Here's what I believe you and I need to understand. We need to keep a proper focus on the giver of the gifts rather than the gifts. You and I need to put on the biblical glasses, so to speak, and look at the world for what the world really is. See, what you and I want to do is we want to take off these protective glasses of the Bible, set them down, look at the Son directly, and just take in all the Son has to offer. And yet what we don't realize is that the evil one takes every good gift God creates and flips it somehow to create evil, and we then buy into the evil because it looks like a gift from God, and it pulls us away because we've taken off the glasses, the biblical worldview that God has given to us to look at the giver of those good gifts. So here's the thing that we need to think of. We have the Son and we have the gifts. If they are in perfect formation, they rotate around our life perfectly. And there are going to be moments where God allows those gifts to eclipse him for a moment. But here's what we need to really see. We need to see that gift as an eclipse quickly so that we can move it on. Think about this. That eclipse lasted minutes last week. It did not last months or years. Why? Because God knew it's not beneficial for this earth, for the moon to eclipse the sun for long periods of time. Guess what he knows? He knows that it is not beneficial for the things of this world to eclipse the saving work of Jesus Christ on our lives for very long. Here's what he does. He pours great riches into our life, allows it to come in view of the sun, the effects of the sun on that gift, then say, hey, guess what? I realize that there is a group of people that need what God has given to me. Therefore, I am going to give it out rather than be unsatisfied by that gift. And that gift then moves on, and the Son and the gifts that he gives to us continue to rotate our lives in perfect formation. So actually this morning, out of these gifts, as God identified some things that are eclipsing the work of the Son in your lives, if there's something that is eclipsing the work of Jesus Christ, maybe this morning we would be challenging you, hey, move that gift out of the way of the Son. Let the Son do the work to cultivate the energy and purpose he has for you in this world, and put it in its rightful place. There is a right place for every one of these gifts. It's not a day for us to say, you know what, I'm going to get rid of my marriage, therefore I can focus on God. That's not what he's saying. All right? I'm going to kick my kids out so that I can afford to live. That's not what he's saying. All right? He is saying, take a view of the gifts I've given you. Put them in the right place. Let the sun shine as he should. And you and I will see how every good gift has been given to us so that we can work it out or work with it, the ministry that he's given to us, for his glory. We're going to sing in just a second. And I want to encourage you, as we pray, to think about this idea that you and I have been called to live for Jesus. And God is challenging us to use the gifts he's given to us as we walk through this world for his glory. Would you pray and ask God to help you use the gifts he's given to you for his glory? Would you pray with me? Father, we're grateful again for the privilege to